COPWATCH, policing the police every single day.
You get the whole thing.
Say hi, Andy. I'm recording you.
All right, you get the whole thing. Right?
I got you.
Ocean City cops are not people.
Yes, they are. You know what's really criminal?
What's that?
Those knee-high socks.
I know, but that's what the brown shirts wore.
Thank you. Cool.
That being said, this is still my last opportunity to address the City Council as presently constituted. And I wanted to thank you for your patience and understanding as it relates to the adoption of the new sign code. What gets lost in the debate as to whether or not using the F word on a sign that's visible by children is protected by the First Amendment is that since 2015, when the U.S. Supreme Court adopted its decision in Reed versus City of Gilbert, our previously existing sign code, which was based on content-based categories, was viewed to be unconstitutional because it was an infringement on free speech. In order to be constitutional, the U.S. Supreme Court said that the ordinances relating to signs needed to be content neutral. And so the code that you adopted, obviously with debate as you went through the process, makes it much greater opportunity for speech to be presented on the signs that are within the city of Punta Gorda, particularly, for example, with respect to political signs. And so rather than repeal the ordinance, as was suggested earlier this morning, the ordinance that you adopted greatly expands the rights of free speech within the city of Punta Gorda, and I think you should be commended for that. So thank you. That's all I have.
I was asked a question, as long as we're on this subject, is there any way to pursue civil action against people who are blatantly opposing the sign ordinance and being continuous disruptions?
Well, all right, so the immediate answer to your question is no. The disruptions that you may be referring to, from what I've heard during our staff meetings, for example, are more in the nature of verbal disruptions, not necessarily with respect to the signs that violated our sign code. To my knowledge, there has been no further violation of the sign codes by the two people who received orders against them by the Code Enforcement Board, which are now on appeal. And so to the extent that there aren't any new violations of the sign code, and that's now in the court with respect to their challenge that our ordinance is unconstitutional, we'll ultimately get a decision by the court with respect to that. A motion to stay enforcement against those two individuals will be presented to the Code Enforcement Board at the next Code Enforcement Board meeting. In view of the fact that it's now really in the courts, we'll be recommending to the Code Enforcement Board to grant the stay as it relates to those existing violations. And there's two new violations that were made prior to the notice of appeal being filed, which we're going to continue until after a decision is rendered by the courts. That saves the city additional legal fees and what have you. Certainly the city will enforce any new violation by those gentlemen or anyone else, which is a violation of the sign code, which in fact remains lawful until a court of competent jurisdiction decides otherwise. So I've talked briefly to the police department about the opportunity to deal with disruptions, public public disturbances, for example, which are unrelated to the sign code. And so if there's a need to be more aggressive with respect to the enforcement of disturbing the peace, that can still be done. And again, that's not related to the sign code, that's related to verbal expression, which our ordinance does not address.
I ask that for a number of reasons. There is one group that has a church service in Gilchrist Park every Sunday, and the church service has been disrupted, blatantly disrupted, on a couple of occasions. I understand that police would have to be called and they have to witness it firsthand before they can do anything about it. That's one instance. We had the instance at the school where the signage was outside the school entrance, and we also had one over the weekend for an hour on one side of the bridge and an hour on the other side of the bridge with a fetus picture. And I'm sorry, I just think that we're breaching the acceptability threshold.
Well, as the city attorney, I can only advise that there is a fair amount of free speech that is in fact protected by the U.S. Constitution. I've simply advised the city council that with respect to obscenity as we've defined it, which is based on case law, fighting words as we've defined it, as based on case law, and indecent speech as we've defined it, those are the areas that I think we are comfortable in regulating, because the courts have said those three categories, although it may be content-based, are clearly not protected by First Amendment rights. Other things that we might find distasteful, however, are protected.
Okay.
Now, there may be, one of the things we were talking about is regardless of what's being said, if someone's on a bullhorn that's turned up, say that 6 blocks away, it's waking people up, and I'm being very facetious, but does that disturb the peace in some manner, regardless of what's being said, aside from the discussion of the content of what's being said? Is there something that's too loud that we can try to prevent if that occurs? And that's a whole different discussion, I believe, than this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, under council member comments, I have a few things.
Yeah, piggy, 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 get your fake donut, piggy, piggy, piggy. They kill adults, man. They don't kill babies, they kill adults. Here, piggy, piggy, piggy. They do. Charlotte County has killed the most people in the street and in the jail than any other time in history. Did you know that? So they don't do abortion, they just kill old people, regular people, victimless crimes. Here, piggy, 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 get your donut, piggy. Here, piggy, 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 get your donut, piggy, 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 piggy. Here, piggy, 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 get your donut, piggy. Here, piggy, 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 get your donut. Piggy, piggy, piggy. Here, piggy, 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 get your donut, piggy. Piggy, come on, yes, you see the donut. I know you're tempted, man. It's plastic. I hope you choke on it and die. Fuck abortion. Fuck abortion. Do you guys know any baby killers? Did you help kill babies? Fuck abortion. The sheriff kills people in the streets and the jail all day, man. He doesn't need abortion, he just kills them when they're adults. Oh my God. Here, piggy, 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 get your donut, piggy. Here, piggy, 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 get your donut. I know you kill adults, not babies. Here, piggy.